Let's face it, friends, ultimately, DMs and GMs have all the fun. You know, isn't it kind of true? I mean, in spite of the amount of work that a DM or a GM has to put in to get the game going and to keep the story moving, ultimately, they get to do some of the coolest stuff. I have to just give so much props to One Crit Wonder because last night's game was amazingly fun. He was concerned because he had a few distractions in the house behind him, but you know what? None of us even really noticed, and in spite of that, it was still an amazing game. And here's why it inspired this topic for today, because I think ultimately the DM gets to have so much fun because they get to choose how they're gonna run their game. And then, like, they get all the credit when cool stuff happens. There's just something to be said. Like, everybody likes to get loot and likes to have cool things happen in the game. And without the DM setting those moments up in the first place, it never happens. And even if it is a prepared adventure, a module, if you don't have to be doing homebrew for this to come into effect. I'm gonna explain why, because it was just brilliantly executed last night and made such a great session for all of us, and I think it's worth addressing and just giving credit where credit's due. The DMs get to have all the fun. Last night, 3 really cool things happened that advanced the story, I think, in fun ways. And it wasn't so much any role-playing in particular last night. It wasn't anything outrageously that happened from rolling dice, although the dice rolling last night did make for a lot of the fun that was had, because we had one fight that was starting off really badly, and then the tables turned and we had like 3 critical rolls by 3 different players that just turned the whole fight into this like epic moment of combat, which was super cool. I think what actually made last night so much fun, and the 3 things that were, in my opinion, great for story advancement, were basically they were presented in a way by One Crit Wonder. I mean, by our DM. We had the opportunity. So let me back up a half step. In our last session, Jamrel the Bard decided to use his ability to cast Detect Magic as a ritual. And he did, and there's a certain, how do I want to say it? There are limitations on Detect Magic, right? One of those limitations is if there's a certain amount of earth or a certain amount of rock or metal in between you and the object, technically you're not supposed to be able to detect the magic. However, because it made the story more interesting, One Crit Wonder decided to sort of let that rule slide a little bit and said that Jamrel actually did detect the faint hint of magic in the space below him underground, which I thought was really cool. Yeah, okay, that's not exactly how the spell works, but it made the story more interesting. So that was a wonderful choice. So then when we go downstairs into this dungeon, into this barrow, and we are searching around, Jamrel is able to lead us to the first of a few magic items that we recovered in this place. And the first one that we found was actually a magical lute. How cool is that? Like, ultimate reward, right? The bard gets to have a magical instrument now, which actually is probably going to come in really handy. It's not one of the like super bard instruments, but it is definitely going to provide lots of opportunity for, you know, fun use in the game. And I just thought it was such a cool reward for Jamro, because we keep, you know, teasing him about it. We keep teasing Ben about it because, you know, unfortunately, lots of these monsters are resisting Jamrel's, you know, attempts at casting magic at them. You know, they keep making their saving throws. But Jamrel tries, and he's got this plucky attitude, which we all adore. And so he's just like so important in this group to keep us from getting like into like really dark places, I think, with this group. And it's so excellent. He just balances our party so nicely. So it was super cool to see him get that kind of a reward. Then as we're going through and clearing out this barrow, we come across another really cool item. And this is why I think that the DM deserves all the credit, because in the module, it's described as a certain weapon. And I don't want to spoil it for anyone that might play this module, but there is a weapon that we found that was described as being a longsword. But you know what? The DM doesn't have to let that be. The DM can make whatever the decision they want. It's their world that they're creating. They get to make the final decisions. Yes, each player plays a part to tell the story, to build the story. And yes, the dice will help us determine those random events, like in the fight that ensued once this weapon was recovered. But ultimately, this DM, One Crit Wonder, decided that, hey, why don't I make this a weapon that someone in the group would actually want to use? Because our three melee characters, I should say, Raytheon, Cazador, and Longtooth, they all use long weapons. They all use essentially polearms. Cazador uses a spear, just a standard spear, which is versatile. But Rathian, that always cracks me up. Rathian and Longtooth are both using polearms, a glaive and a long spear or a pike, respectively. And so One Crit Wonder had them roll percentile dice, and whoever got the highest roll, they didn't know what this was about, but ultimately whatever the highest roll was, that character's preferred weapon became the weapon we recovered in this barrow. Brilliant! That's absolutely brilliant. I had a similar situation in one of my games where the party found a sword, and I described it as it was described in the module, and then I thought about it after the fact, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. This character, they don't like that. They don't like a short sword. They like a long sword. So why don't I just change it to a long sword? And that's what I did. And I used a trick of magic that, you know, you might be familiar with, like, okay, well, you put on this suit of armor and it's too big, but as soon as you put it on, it adjusts to your size. Or you put a ring on your finger and it's too big, but the magic in it allows it to then adjust to the size of your finger, and so forth. I basically did the same thing. I said, you know, when you first pick this sword up, it was a short sword. You know this for a fact. But as you draw it out of your scabbard, you notice that it's no longer a short sword. It is, in fact, a long sword. Apparently, as you've spent time with this magical item, it has adapted itself to your preference. And so these are these amazing story moments. So here we are in the underground fighting, you know, these weird creatures, and Longtooth finds a great spear that he is, like, of course, happy to wield. When he picks it up, then the madness ensues, and we have, you know, like, this death-defying combat where, again, I mentioned we had these, like, 3 critical rolls. You know, we went from rolling, like, all ones in, like, over the last couple sessions or whatever, or at the beginning of this game session, and then we had, like, we must have had 7 or 8 natural 20s critical rolls in this on both sides. The DM rolled at least 1 critical critical role, and we rolled a couple critical rolls, and it was just super fun the way that combat played out. And there's one more thing that happened in this session that was awesomely cool. We found, so Rathian, who is sort of, he's, you know, again, Oathbreaker Paladin, sort of on his way to becoming a Death Knight, which is a little bit concerning, at least to my character, because, why she's a little concerned is going to come out, I think, in some role playing that I intend to have between our two characters. But we'll see where that goes in the future here, Curtis, next time we play, hopefully. Or if not, very soon down the road. But back to the story, we go and we find, or sorry, no, Rathian finds a skeletal horse in this barrow. And befriends it, and now has a mount that is a skeletal horse. No, it's not like a nightmare or a death steed or anything like that. But how cool is that? The Oathbreaker Paladin, who is, you know, basically on this path he doesn't necessarily want to be. It's not necessarily his choice to be, but for some reason is on this path toward darkness, and he gets a mount that is a skeletal horse. It was so great to see these like 3 really cool moments for 3 of the characters in our party, all in one session. And I know I'm repeating myself, and so I apologize, I guess, but I don't feel really badly about it. I'm just gonna apologize anyway. I gotta give credit to where credit's due, and in this case, it was absolutely, in my opinion, the DM who set this stage so nicely. And not only that, because obviously some of it is part of the module, the way he chose to play it out during the game and let the story evolve during the game is what I think that you, One Crit Wonder, deserve credit for. It was so nice. It was, I mean, I think I didn't even, one of those treasures wasn't even for me or my character, and I still think I still got a huge reward out of the session, even though it really didn't involve my character. You know, that's when you know it was an epic session, I think. And then I know at least, I have faith that Cazador is going to find something that is going to reward her and give her or imbue her with the power that she is out in the world searching for, as we found out last session when she and Illum had a nice heart-to-heart. And Illum is absolutely committed to making sure that happens. So I can't wait to see how that develops. So gosh, that's so good. So if you're a DM, I want to encourage you, please find ways to let the players, because they're the ones that ultimately get rewarded, let the players, let their characters have fun. Because ultimately, if you're the DM, you're gonna have fun. Because it is so rewarding when you see your players having a good time. And ultimately, you know, whether it was on purpose or whether it was, you know, a slip, you were responsible for everybody having a good time. Yay! I mean, that's what this game's all about. That's why I love this game. That's why I love talking about this game. That's why you should come back tomorrow for more of this great content. I love you guys. Thank you for being here. I'll see you at a table someday. And until then, keep rolling 20s. Remember, it's your game. Play your way.